Hi, my name is Bob Colonna, and I'm coming to you from the Redwood Library in Newport. Now, I no longer live in Newport, but I spent quite a few years here. And one of the big things about Newport is its tradition of theater. And it's being continued now by the Newport Performing Arts Center, which is a beautiful, beautiful center. As I tape this today, it's under construction. But by the time you see it, it's really going to be something. And I suggest very strongly that you patronize that. And so, here we go, some stories. And these stories are actually in rhyme, for one thing. They're pretty old, and they come from Lancashire, England. Collectively, we like to think of them as the Lancashire rhyming tales. Now, I first heard these on disc with Stanley Holloway, the wonderful British actor, recorded all of these. And that's how I learned them when I was quite a young kid. And I've done them on and off over the years in different venues and so forth. I'm going to do some of them for you now. So the first one is called Albert and the Lion. There's a famous seaside place called Blackpool that's noted for fresh air and fun. And Mr. and Mrs. Ramsbottom went there with young Albert, their son. A grand little lad were young Albert, all dressed in his best, quite a swell, with a stick with an horse's head handle, the finest that Woolworths could sell. Now, they didn't think much to the ocean, the waves they was piddling in small. They was no wrecks and nobody drowned. In fact, nothing to laugh at all. So seeking for further amusement, they paid and went into the zoo, where there were lions and tigers and camels and old ale and sandwiches too. There was one great big lion called Wallace. His nose was all covered with scars. He lay in a somnolent posture with the side of his face on the bars. Now Albert had heard about lions, how they was ferocious and wild, and seeing this one so peaceful, well, it didn't seem right to the child. So straightway the brave little fella, not showing a morsel of fear, took his stick with the horse's head handle and shoved it in Wallace's ear. Could tell the lion didn't like it. For giving a kind of a roll, he pulled Albert inside the cage with him and swallowed the little lad whole. Then Pa, who had seen the occurrence and didn't know what to do next, says, "Mother, yon lion's at Albert." And Mother said, I am vexed." Then Mr. and Mrs. Ramsbottom, quite rightly when all said and done, complained to the animal keeper that the lion had eaten their son. Keeper was quite nice about it. He says, "What a nasty mishap. You sure it's your boy he's eaten? They said he was sure there's his cap." The manager had to be sent for. He came and he says, "What's to do?" They said, "Well, young lion's at Albert, and him and his son to close too." Well, the manager wanted no trouble. He took out his purse right away, saying, "How much to settle the matter?" Pa said, "What do you usually pay?" But Mother had turned a bit awkward when she thought where Albert had gone. She says, "No, someone's got to be summoned." So that was decided upon. So down they went to the police station in front of the magistrate chap. They told him what happened to Albert and proved it by showing his cap. The magistrate gave his opinion that no one was really to blame and said that he hoped the Ramsbottoms would have further sons to their name. At that Mother got proper blazing. "And thank you, sir, kindly," says she. "What, waste all our lives raising children to feed bloody lions? Not me." And that's that. Oh, thank you.
Oh, wonderful.
And now there is a sequel to that called Albert Comes Back. And that goes this way. You've heard how young Albert Ramsbottom in the zoo up at Blackpool one year, with a stick with an horse's head handle, gave a lion a poke in the ear. The name of the lion was Wallace. The poke in the ear made him wild, and before you could say, "Bob's your uncle," he'd up and he'd swallowed the child. He was sorry the moment he'd done it. With children, he'd always been chums, and besides, he'd no teeth in his noddle, and he couldn't chew Albert on gums. He could feel the lad moving inside him as he lay on his bed of dried ferns, and it might have been little lad's birthday. He wished him such happy returns. But Albert kept kicking and biting till Wallace arose feeling bad and decided to a time that he started to stage a comeback for the lad. So with his head down in a corner, on his front paws he started to walk, and he coughed, and he sneezed, and he gargled, till Albert shot out like a cork. Old Wallace felt better directly, and his figure once more became lean. The only difference with Albert was his face and his hands was quite clean. Meanwhile, Mr. and Mrs. Ramsbottom had gone home to their tea, feeling blue. Ma says, "I feel down in the mouth like." Pa says, "Oh, I bet Albert does too." "It just goes to show you," says Mother, "the future is never revealed. If I thought we was going to lose him, I'd have not had his boots soled and healed." "Let's look on the bright side," says Father. "What can't be helped must be endured. Every cloud has a silvery lining, and we did have young Albert insured." A knock at the door came that moment, as Father these kind words did speak. 'Twas the man from Prudential. He'd come for their twopence per person per week. When Father saw who had been knocking, he laughed, and he kept laughing, so the young man says, "What's there to laugh at?" Pa says, "You're laughing all when you know." "Excuse him for laughing," says Mother, "but really, things happen quite strange. Our Albert's been ate by a lion. You've got to pay us for a change." When the young man had heard all the details, his hand from his pocket he drew, and he paid them with interest and bonus the sum of £9 4 and 2. Now, Pa had scarce got his hand on the money when a face at the window they see. And Mother says, "Hey, look, it's Albert." And Father says, "Oh, it would be." Young Albert came in all excited and started his story to give. And Pa says, "I'll never trust lions again, not as long as I live." The young fella from the Prudential to pick up the money began. And Father says, "Hey, just a moment. Don't be in a hurry, young man." And giving young Albert a shilling, he said, "Pop off back to the zoo. Here's your stick with the horse's head handle. Go and see what the tigers can do." So the third of the stories about Albert takes a bit of a jump in time, and it's called Albert and the Headsman. I'm trying to think if there's anything in this one that needs explaining. I don't think so, but we can always ask. Anyway, on young Albert Ramsbottom's birthday, his parents asked what he'd like most. He said to see Tower of London and gaze upon Anne Boleyn's ghost. They thought this request were unusual, and at first to refuse were inclined. The Pa said, "A trip to the Trollops might broaden the little lad's mind." So they took Cheddarbank up to London and arrived at 4:15, and seeing his pubs wasn't open, they went straight away to the Tower. They didn't think much to the building. 'Tweren't what they'd been led to suppose, and the bad word Tower didn't impress them. They said Blackpool had got one of those. And young Albert spied a beefeater and filled the old chap with alarm by asking for ghost of Anne Boleyn, as carried her head neath her arm. Said Beefeater, "You ought to come Fridays if it's ghost of Anne Boleyn you'd seek. Her union now limits her output, She only gets one walk a week. But, he said, if it's ghosts that you're after, there's Lady Jane Grey's to be seen. She runs around chased by the Headsman at midnight on the old Tower Green. Well, they waited on Green till near midnight, and thinking they'd time for a sup, they took out what food they brought with them and waited for ghosts to turn up. On first stroke of 12, up jumped Albert, his mouth full of cold, dripping toast. With a stick with the horse's head handle, he pointed and said, "Here's the ghost." They could feel their skins going all goosey as Lady Jane's spectre drew near, and Albert fair swallowed his tonsils when the Headsman and all did appear. Round and round the grass patch he chased her. They could see his axe flash in the moon. And seeing his poor lass were headless, they wondered what next he would prune. He suddenly caught sight of Albert as midnight went on its last chime. As he lifted his axe, Father murmured, "We'll get the insurance this time." The brave little lad stood undaunted till ghosts were within half a pace, then taking the toast he'd been eating, slapped it, dripping side down, in Ghost's face. So the proper setback for the Headsman, he let out one howl of despair, and taking his lady friend with him, he disappeared, just like that there. Well, when Father saw how they had vanished, he trembled with fear and looked blue, but Ma came and patted his shoulder and said, "'S all right, lad, we saw it too." Now some think 'twas the Drippins as done it. From a roast leg of mutton it came, and seeing his ghosts were beef eater, well, they reckoned he vanished from shame. But on the old Tower Green from that moment, they've ne'er seen the sign of a ghost. But when beef eaters go on guard duty, they take slices of cold, dripping toast. Thank you. And lastly, and then putting it lastly, you can always take this out because I don't sing very well, but there's a song. It might be fun. And as you've heard, there's an audience here. So if you guys want to sing along with the chorus, feel welcome to, please. This is called "With Her Head Tucked Underneath Her Arm." In the Tower of London, large as life, the ghost of Anne Boleyn walks, they declare. Poor Anne Boleyn was once King Henry's wife, until he made the Headsman bob her hair. Oh yes, he did it long years ago, and she comes up at night to tell him so. With her head tucked underneath her arm, she walks the bloody tower, with her head tucked underneath her arm at the midnight hour. She's come to haunt King Henry, she means giving him what for. Gadzook, she's going to tell him off for having spilled the gore. And just in case the Headsman wants to give her an encore, she has her head tucked underneath her arm. With her head tucked underneath her arm, she walks the bloody tower, with her head tucked underneath her arm at the midnight hour. Along the draughty corridors for miles and miles she goes. She often catches cold, poor thing. It's cold there when it blows. And it's awfully awkward for the Queen to have to blow her nose with her head tucked underneath her arm. Now sometimes gay King Henry gives a spread for all his gals and pals, a ghostly crew. The Headsman carves the joint and cooks the bread. Then in comes Anne Boleyn to queer the do. She holds her head up with a wild war whoop, And Henry cries, "Don't drop it in the soup," with her head tucked underneath her arm. She walks the bloody tower with her head tucked underneath her arm at the midnight hour. The sentries think that it's a football that she carries in, and when they've had a few, they shout, "Is Arsenal going to win?" They think it's Alec Gaines instead of poor old Anne Boleyn, with her head tucked underneath her arm. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Take care.